Throughout this semester in diversity in media, there was definitely a lot to take away and a lot that I learned and a lot of ways that I grew in my understanding of media as a profession and how to properly go about a lot of things. But I think the SLO that I took the most from was probably the first one, which would have been the diversity understanding. And it talked about being proficient in communication across a lot of differences in those that are traditionally disenfranchised. I definitely expanded on my definition of disenfranchisement in the first place and gained an understanding that it is much, much broader than I thought before. The SLO pointed out things like race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, which I all understood, but then it got into intellectual diversity and abilities, which weren't things that I considered as much before we talked about them in class. So I think from that SLO's perspective, I first just expanded on my definition of disenfranchisement, and that definitely came across in the group projects too, where everybody kind of took a different topic, from health disparities to religion, and everything in between, and I got to see just some deeper roots of disenfranchisement that I wasn't really familiar with prior to the class. And I think in terms of this being a foundation for our work in the media industry, it definitely gave me an understanding of the importance of storytelling in disenfranchised communities and also how to go about that. I think a lot of the stories that I would have sought out prior to this class were ones typical of my own, kind of like I talked about on the last day in class, how we tend to stick in our own bubble and talk to people we're comfortable with. And the diversity understanding learning objective definitely pushed me to work towards finding stories that maybe I wouldn't have found before, or in communities I wasn't comfortable with going to before. But I now would consider myself more comfortable because I consider myself more equipped to talk to those people that are different than me. I don't feel as nervous to get into those communities because I feel like this course and that learning objective have helped me go about it and understand how to go about it in a more proper way, to where I won't feel as much like I'm walking on eggshells or constantly doing something wrong, because I understand that the diversity is okay and we can still talk to each other even if we have diverse backgrounds. And then the theme that I found most specifically useful actually surprised me when I went back and looked at all of the module themes and really considered which one that I think I'm going to use the most. And it actually came out to be the one from Module 6, which was earlier on in the semester and covered ageism. I think that this theme was especially relevant to me in the political environment of this semester, because I think a lot of the political differences seemed to come from generational gaps in understanding and the views of different generations of each other, and kind of what boiled down to become stereotypes rather than factual and seeking out like true understanding of the other generations. And I hadn't really considered before some of the key points like generational identity and things like that, and how tied we are to our generations. Age wasn't always something that I considered. I mean, obviously it's a demographic, but I didn't consider how much of a difference it would really make in worldview, and this module definitely opened my eyes to that. And I think that I am going to take that module away as most useful because I now better understand the way that our worldviews are formed by the environments in which we grew up in. That definitely came up in the final project, as well as I specifically interviewed somebody obviously much older than me, and through that interview got to see really how what was going on at different points in their life shaped their worldview. And I kind of can compare and contrast it with my own ways that my worldview has been shaped by the environments that I've grown up in. So I think in terms of talking across difference and potentially acting as a media professional, continuing to do interviews, continuing to look for diverse perspectives when it comes to age, I now will have it always in the back of my mind that, hey, the time period in which this person grew up in really probably determines a lot of the ways that they think, and sort of come at people less harshly for maybe being less open-minded than I expect them to be, because not everybody is 20 years old and still forming their prefrontal cortexes. So there was that aspect, and then I also really found it interesting the sort of little documentary that was part of that module about older women and some of the stereotypes they face when it comes to being single and not having kids and not living the traditional lives up to the point that they got, and how they're kind of treated differently because of it. And so I think that really broadened my perspective of just what it means to live a full life and be interesting, and that somebody can still have lived a full life and be a very interesting individual with worthwhile perspectives to talk to as a journalist, even if they didn't live a life that everybody else kind of would have expected. And I really, really appreciated that documentary's perspective on society's treatment of older women in particular. And then to sort of wrap everything all up, whether it was the ageism or diversity understandings of different differences like intellectual disabilities, which was another module that I really appreciated, I think this class better prepared me to, one, seek out stories that I wouldn't have before, two, talk to those people that are different than me and encourage them to elaborate and make them feel comfortable when I'm talking to them, because I think obviously a lot of getting the most out of an interview or out of somebody else's perspective is encouraging them to open up, and they're not going to open up if they see you as hostile. So a lot of what I overall took from this course was learning how to approach somebody in a way as a media professional that is the least intimidating and the most constructive to have diverse conversations. So that is probably my biggest takeaway from the class. I understand that heated environments can get heated, and again, the political environment during this semester contributed to that. But learning to listen and not just respond has always been something that I understood that I wasn't the best at, but has been instilled in me even further by this class. And I hope that as I continue in the world as a media professional, because of my experience this semester, that will always kind of ping in my brain a little bit more, and I will be a more open and comfortable listening ear for those that I wish to report on.